Hey guys, how's it going? I hope you're all doing really well out there today. In this video, we're going to take a look at Tugtainer.
Phrasing?
And no, this is not a container to manage your me time materials. This is a Docker container that helps you keep your other containers up to date, kind of along the same lines as Watchtower. This popped up recently in several places, kind of simultaneously. I think Reddit, my Discord, I think Ethan Shawley's newsletter. If you're not subscribed to that, you should be. And I took a look at it, and I want to share my experience with Tugtainer with you. So let's just go ahead and jump right into this. Let's take a look at my setup and kind of how that works and kind of my experience with everything and some of the areas that I struggled with and how I think those can be improved upon. And then we'll jump into the installation process. So let's do that now. Actually, before we do that, I want to say thank you guys so much for getting the channel to where it is. We're very, very close to hitting 100,000 subscribers here on DB Tech, and that genuinely blows my mind. I remember hitting 50,000 and thinking that was it, but we're within a couple of hundred of subscribers from hitting 100,000, and that, again, just blows my mind. So thank you guys so much for your support. To go along with that, I've decided instead of doing one of those 100,000 subscriber countdown things, I'm just going to do a merch launch. It doesn't have my dumb face on it. It doesn't say DB Tech anywhere on there. It's just some good, fun, home lab related stuff, stickers, t-shirts, hoodies, those sorts of things. And starting the 29th, running through the 5th, kind of midnight morning to midnight evening, we're running a kind of a launch sale to thank you guys for your support. I want to help you guys get some merch on the cheap. So if you want to check out the link in the video description, that would be amazing. But I think with all of that said, let's jump back over to the actual reason you're here. So this is Tugtainer, and I actually really like the way everything is laid out. It kind of makes sense. You can, like, basically top left, you've got, of course, your branding. That's where it belongs. There's a little menu. We'll come back to that menu later. And then across, let's just knock this out across the top. We've got a version. This doesn't click though. Oops, though it has the cursor icon. It doesn't click. I don't know why they chose to do that. It is what it is. And then there's a log out button there. Below that, we'll see what server we're looking at. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But basically right now we're on our local host. This is everything that's running on the server where Tugtainer is installed. Below that, we can search, which I think is great. And then below that, we can sort by name. We've got status, health, check, update, and then kind of a status over here or what your available options are. So here we've got astroluma _ MongoDB. That's the name of the container. If we click that, we can kind of get an idea of which image it is, its ID, its ports. It's got some good information here, which again, I appreciate. And you can just, you can click the little arrow there and toggle that. I think this arrow is too big. I think it needs to be much smaller. I kind of get why it's that big to call your attention to it, but I don't know. Something about the aesthetic doesn't sit right with me. Anyway, next we can see the status. It's running. Its health is unknown. There's no health check running on this. So, it is what it is. Here where it says check, this is turned on. You can click or unclick this if you want to get notified or have the system check and then notify, I guess, on that container. So basically, if you want to see if this container has an update at any given point, you just turn this on. Then based on your cron jobs that we'll talk about later, it will check that container. If that's a container you don't want it to check, you can turn that off. Next to that, we've got update, and this is very similar to that. By default, all of these are off. But if for whatever reason you want Tugtainer to automatically update your containers when there is an update available, you can toggle that on. I don't advise that unless you are very, very confident with the developer of that application. Or if you're pinning versions, you should be fine. If you're using the latest tag, I advise against automatically updating anything. And then over here, we've got the option to update or check. Basically, all of these are the updates that are available on our local host. And if I want to, I can just click update, and then it says in progress. and it'll kind of do its thing in the background. And here in a moment that will complete, and then this update will turn to check, and it'll actually get moved down to here. It was actually this one right there. So that means we're good to go. So again, if I wanted to, I could just click update on all of these, and it would automatically update all of the containers that I told it to update. I think that's awesome. I really dig how easy this is to do. If you want to, you can click refresh, or you can click check all, and it will go through and manually recheck all of the containers that you've got set to check. So very, very straightforward. Here it says, hey, check completed, available for. We can verify that. We can see those right there, except my dumb head's in the way of the bottom one there. Love how easy that is. So that's kind of the local host aspect of things. Now, what's cool about this is that you can connect to other servers. And down here, we can see that I've got TTRSS and Moodist down here. And if I click those, it'll toggle those open. I closed them deliberately earlier. And here we can see, I've got Portainer, Think Dashboard, Fresh RSS, Socket Proxy. We're going to talk about Socket Proxy later. We need that as an option anyway to connect to remote servers on your same local host. I should clarify that. And then there's Tugtainer that I was messing with on that server and then turned it off, which is why its status is exited. But again, we can see all of that same information here. Which version it's on, which we're using long-term support there. Its status, its health, all of that is the same. I've got this set to auto update because I've never run into a situation where the folks at Portainer screwed me here. So I've got that one. I trust that developer to let me do auto updates with no issues. But just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to click update anyway. And it says in progress. And again, here in a moment, it moved that down, it updated it, and now it is good to go. And again, we can open this up and we can see when it was last checked and when it was last updated. And I love that. I think that's really cool. And again, I've got another one down here for Moodist. Again, I was proving to myself I knew what I was doing earlier. I'm gonna be honest with you. You deserve that much, right? So that is kind of the user interface aspect of things as far as where you're gonna spend most of your time. Pretty straightforward as far as that's concerned, but there's some stuff in the admin area, I guess you'd call it, that I want to show you real quick as well. So let's jump back over to my desktop. We're going to come back up to this hamburger menu that we talked about a minute ago that I said I would show you. Here we are. We're going to click hamburger menu, and then we've got hosts, containers, images, settings, and GitHub. GitHub will just take you to the GitHub, so good on them. Hosts, right? This is local host, and there are two remote hosts here. To show you what this looks like, there's nothing in here you can't see, right? So general, so basically most of the settings are passed through a Python on Whales library parameters. You can read that for yourself. You can connect via SSH. Maybe you can, I couldn't. I struggled for like an hour, could not get SSH to work. Ended up getting the Socket Proxy template to work after a struggle. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but we can enable or disable this without necessarily deleting it, and I think that's great. We can have it auto prune, which I think is cool as well. We'll give it a name, and we'll set up our host. Basically, how do we want to connect? Where do we want to connect, and how? So we're going to connect via TCP on this IP address on this port. That's all the standard information that you would use for the Socket Proxy template. There's extra stuff in here like TLS if you wanted to connect with an SSL. And then there's also extra stuff in here that you can configure as well if you run into issues or want a bit more granularity with what's going on there. Once you've got all that set up, you can click Save. Now, in order to get this Socket Proxy to work, you have to install the Socket Proxy container on whatever remote host you want to manage. So this is the remote server, the screen that we're looking at right now. I wanted to make sure I was right. The screen that we're looking at right now is our remote server, right? And if we click into editor, this is the Socket Proxy service that you need to run on all of the remote servers that you want to manage. If you're only doing a remote, like you've got one server with everything on that, this part of the video doesn't apply to you, right? So you'll just install this. I will put this in the video description as a link to a code repository somewhere. this will be available to you is what I'm trying to say here. It needs to be like this. There's a couple of things in here that don't necessarily matter, but this is what I used to get things working. I deployed this, and then once I did that, then I was able to use the socket proxy template over here on Tugtainer. And it took me quite a while to figure that out. And the reason for that is something we're going to come back to because I don't want to get ahead of myself. We're going to come back over to here, right? We talked about hosts. We've got containers here. That's our homepage, right? I think this is out of order. I think containers should be at the top and then hosts should be below. But again, that's a preferential thing for me. Next, we've got images. And here we can see all of the different images that are available on each of the different hosts. And these are, again, kind of broken out into each individual host. You can toggle these down. And we can see in here what's being used. Basically, if it doesn't have unused or dangling, it's being used. So if it says unused or dangling, it's not being used by anything. So what's cool about that is you can click prune and it says, hey, do you want to prune images? Yes, I do. So we're going to give this a second to do its thing. And hey, look at all of this stuff it deleted and how much space we saved, about 2.5 gigs plus or minus, right? So I'm going to close that. I'm going to click refresh. And hopefully, well, that was interesting. I don't know why. Okay, apparently this just needs a bit of time to collect itself. But basically, you can then clean up all of the stuff you're not using just by clicking a button. Hey, do you want to do it on that server too? Sure, let's do that. That's cool. So it reclaimed about 270 megs. One more time, just for good measure. Didn't reclaim anything. Cool. I don't know what's going on there. That's really weird. But that's the general thought process behind that anyway. And then next we've got settings coming back up to that menu. And in here, I'm going to block some of this so you can't see it. But basically, here is where you've got things where you can tell it when you want to check. This will basically run at midnight every day. I believe. I'm not good with cron, but basically this is the default. It'll run at midnight. Notification, URL, time zone, and Docker timeout. Now, I want to talk about the notification URL here because we're going to come back over to their GitHub real quick. Here on Tugtainer, right? And I know I'm jumping a little bit here, but there's a reason for that. Tugtainer is a self-hosted app for automating updates in your Docker containers. It's like well-known Watchtower, but with web UI where you can change most of the settings or view the current state of the containers. And I love that. That's amazing. And we've seen that in action, right? Please be aware that the application is distributed as is and is not recommended for use in production environment. Cool. I appreciate them calling that out. And don't forget about regular backups. I agree. Super important. Automatic updates are disabled by default. You can choose only what you need. I love that. Having automatic updates is a risky thing, especially in a production environment. So, main features, web UI, socket proxy, multiple host support, cron tab, notifications to a wide range of services, per container config, manual check and update, automatic manual image pruning, compose support, sort of. Right. So below that, we've got this deploy quick start. We've got this. And it's the documentation that throws me a little bit, right? Like, I feel like there's a bit of maybe a language barrier that I'm missing somewhere because it's just like, here's a bunch of stuff and it doesn't explain why you're doing each of the different things. Right? It doesn't necessarily explain things in such a way that makes sense to me. And I think it's entirely possible that this is a language barrier. And that's fine. But the documentation is sparse at this point, and I hope that gets better. For instance, notifications to a wide range of services. Cool. Using what method? It doesn't say. I ended up having to go through the files, and I just searched for like notifications in here, and finally discovered that notifications are being facilitated through a prize. And it wasn't listed anywhere in the documentation that a prize was being used to facilitate notifications. It could have been any number of things, but it wasn't explicitly declared. So I actually had to dig through the code a little bit to find where that library was called in. So it uses a prize. Also, I kept running into situations where I would get, I would be on my homepage and I would be trying to check one of my remote servers and like nothing was showing up here. And if I tried to do a refresh or a check or anything, I would get an error message. And coming over to the discussion about this same error message that I got, which was like 424 failed dependency when managing the container. Like I kept getting this same error message over and over and over. And I couldn't figure out why. And this person was like, hey, a little help. And again, he's like, yeah, I get what you mean. Current implementation is native Docker CLI method, so it was relatively easy to do. Like there's no acknowledgement. There's no, again, and this is where the language barrier thing started to come up for me with regard to what I think anyway, right? Again, this person running into the same basic issue. I think it was this one. Where there's just an issue with it not communicating. And the developer was very, to me, it seems like the developer just expects you to know what his intentions were based on the documentation or lack thereof, right? And again, I hope that changes. I hope I am just misunderstanding this, but I think this could be amazing if the documentation was better, more fleshed out, more documented. So that's kind of my experience with that. That said, deploying this was relatively straightforward as far as deploying Tugtainer on a local host, right? Go to back to my desktop and come over to here. This is the Docker Compose that I'm using on my local host to make everything work, right? We've got our service, which is Tugtainer. Again, that name. The image is being pulled from the Docker repository. We've got our volume. We're connecting to the Docker socket here. This time zone stuff was me troubleshooting based on some documentation I saw an issue in GitHub. Restart unless stop network Tugtainer. I'm not sure why they felt the need to put it explicitly on its own network, but it is what it is. On port 9412, if you're already using, which you probably aren't, but if you're already using port 9412, only change 9412 here. Don't change the colon or anything after it. I've also got this socket proxy running here just because this is the same socket proxy that we saw earlier in my other Portainer instance. I don't necessarily know if you need it there, but it's there because when I had it here and there, everything worked, so I just ran with it. So I will have all of this available as links to a len paste or a something where you guys can see the Docker Composes that I'm using. So again, this what we're seeing here is for basically my local host, and then this over here is how I'm connecting via the socket proxy container on my remote hosts, plural. So you just basically deploy both of those and then come back over to Tugtainer, go to hosts, and then you can start adding hosts like I've got here on this screen. And again, you can just click add host, fill in the blanks. You should be good to go as long as the socket proxy container is up and running. Also, just a quick little side thing here. I'm using Godify for my notification services. And these are the notifications that came through when I was doing some testing earlier, right? We come down to the very bottom. This was me connecting to make sure it would work. This is just when I had only my local host working and checking for updates. And then up here, this is what the current configuration that I've got with both a local and 2 remote hosts pulling updates or looking for updates, managing updates, whatever. And I actually appreciate the way it breaks things down into host, the name of the host, what's available for update, host, name of the host, what's available. I think this is great. I love how they've handled this. Again, just wish there had been more about how to get notifications working in the documentation. So there is Tugtainer. Again, the name throws me, but you know, names are hard to come up with these days when everybody's got an app. Again, overall, I love the idea behind the app. I love that it works once it works. I just wish the developer would spend some more time getting the documentation more fleshed out with more detailed information and an explanation as far as what each thing does and how to make each thing work appropriately. I ran into issues, again, trying to get the SSH connection to work. I tried both as root and non-root users. They just wouldn't go. Luckily, there was the backup option with the socket proxy connecting thing, right? So I'm glad that there were multiple options available, but I think with some more documentation and some more how would the user screw this up mentality with that documentation, I think this can be a great app. Again, this is one of those situations of please be careful about using this in production. Please make sure you got backups of everything all of the time. And please be careful with auto updates. They can wreck your system. I've been there. But that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about today and show you was this particular container. Again, I also wanted to thank you guys for getting the channel to where it is. Again, sale on new merch is live by the time you're probably watching this on the public release. So go check that out for the next like 36-ish hours if you want to pick something up. No, I said 36 hours. It's from the 29th to the 5th. If I said something wrong earlier, I apologize. It's from the 29th until the 5th. So if you want to pick up some merch on a great deal, definitely do that. Again, links to everything will be in the video description. So anyway, thank you guys for spending a few minutes of your day with me here today, and I'll talk to you in the next video.